All right, so the market clearly saw what Jay Powell had to say as dovish. You just saw the market reaction. The S&P again having its best day in almost 3 months. How did you view it in some of what seemed to be some couching by Jay Powell about the Fed's strategy going forward?
I think your word couching might be relevant. I would use the word maybe a bit more nuanced. So certainly I think the market read the summary in the right direction, which is a tilt towards a cut possibly as soon as September. But I think maybe the market overreacted in that there is much more data to come. We've heard from some of the Fed presidents that they're not so confident. So I think while there may be one, it might be what some might describe as a hawkish cut, maybe one and done, just a small modification, a step towards neutral, not a campaign of cutting going forward from here.
Does the fact that it could be a quote-unquote hawkish cut as opposed to a dovish cut, does that matter in your mind when it comes to the market? As long as we get the cut, is that all that matters to the market, or the circumstances matter as well?
I think the circumstances matter as well. It will say two things to the market. One is that while there may be a little weakness in the economy, it's nothing that's extreme. And consequently, you've been talking about consumers, for example. That would be an indication the Fed does not see a dramatic weakening in consumer sentiment. It also obviously means that you won't see a continuing repricing of risk assets. So I think one and done versus a series really should be relevant to the market. More relevant, of course, will be the incoming data because that's what's going to drive exactly what the outcome is going to be.
So on Friday, right after Jay Powell's speech, Ellen Zentner from Morgan Stanley came out with a note. I'm just going to summarize it very quickly. She basically said that labor market weakness seems to be overshadowing any concerns about inflation spiking up, at least for the Fed at this moment. Do you agree with that take? And how does that kind of shape your view of the upcoming inflation reports, PCE on Friday, and, of course, the jobs report?
Look, I think all of these things are a bit more in play than the immediate aftermath of Chair Powell's speech. Look, it does look like the Fed is a little comfortable with inflation that is continuing to run, above its target. But if it gets outside of this comfort range, I think maybe, they'll reconsider some of their strategy. Same thing with respect to the labor market. He talked about, complications in reading the market, structural changes. If there is either stability or maybe improvement in the market, that might force a reconsideration. So I think we still have, though he didn't use the words, I think we still have a data-dependent Fed, not one that's on automatic pilot.
So can I ask, we have a data-dependent Fed that at this time at least believes that tariffs are going to create a one-time price shock. We heard Jay Powell say he believes PCE is going to be at 2.9%, obviously well above the target. How do you think the Fed views something like these new possible furniture tariffs? Furniture, obviously, an essential. People need to sit on something, sleep on something.
Look, I think that adds complexity because you may have one might describe it as a series of rolling one-time price increases, and that might feed into people's expectations about inflation. And so, I don't think tariffs are necessarily one and done as the president continues to adjust our international stance vis-a-vis tariffs. So I think that all of this is going to have to come into play a little bit, and it might undercut some of the Fed's confidence that inflation expectations are well contained. If individuals start to see almost every month some new thing that they consume going up in price, they'll start to think maybe inflation is starting to return. That could influence the Fed and should influence the Fed's thinking about its stance of policy going through the next 2 or 3 meetings.